Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to the MSK Runner podcast. My name's Harry Bell. I will be hosting this and bringing you some episodes once a week over the next few months and perhaps maybe even years. As the name suggests, I'll be talking a lot about musculoskeletal conditions, a lot about running, which I like to do in my spare time, and also like basically all things like health, fitness, nutrition, high rocks, weight training, and all sorts, whatever it may be, whatever there is to talk about, we will talk about it. I'm going to do a few episodes, talking myself, and then there'll be also a few where I get some guests on and we'll talk about their fitness journeys, which I find really inspiring. Please, if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple or whatever streaming service, then make sure you subscribe it, turn your notifications on so that you do not miss out on anything. And if you have any questions or if there's any topics you want me to talk about in future episodes, then just put something in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram, and all the details will be in the description. So what we're going to talk about today is the NHS, which is obviously a hugely important resource that we all have. It's existed since just after World War II finished, and it's still going. Not necessarily strong because there's a lot of issues with the NHS. There's a lot of financial constraints and a lack of resources. So, the NHS is massively like overstretched in terms of hospitals, your doctor surgeries and things like that. There's a lot of very good initiatives in place already, designed to kind of like help improve everybody's health, but you're kind of up shit creek without a paddle in a lot of senses. A few stats, because I've done some homework, so I'm not just chatting a load of rubbish. In 2024, 39% of patients who went to A&E had to wait over 4 hours before they got seen to, which is a hell of a long time, especially when you're obviously going to be in a load of pain or a load of distress or whatever it may be as to why you've gone there in the first place. Obviously, cancer is a massive, massive issue that's affected probably all of us, whether it's been directly or indirectly. But the NHS target waiting time for cancer patients to be treated is 62 days. And in 2024, only 69% of cancer patients were treated within that target time. So another like 31% of cancer patients not being treated within that target 62-day waiting time, which is, far too big. And that number needs to come drastically down. And that can be down to a lot of factors, including like a lack of resources, or a lack of available staff and things like that. But then another huge problem in our country, particularly and especially Western, but certainly in our country, is obesity. So last year, 2025, 30% of adults aged 16 plus are obese, and 66% are either overweight or obese. Now, obesity is a massive problem. Obviously, if your weight and your body fat percentage and visceral fat is too high, then that can have a knock-on effect and lead to various health conditions, lots of conditions. So it could cause, like heart disease, whether that's like angina or heart attack or cardiac arrest or high blood pressure. All of those things can be caused by obesity. Things like joint problems, arthritis, that can be caused by obesity, with basically like too much weight, too much body fat causing too much strain and pressure on your joints, and it can only take so much of it. So it can lead to a lot of other conditions. Type 2 diabetes is like a big one as well. That has a big link with obesity. And also just kind of like not having a very good diet, poor nutrition, and also a sedentary lifestyle as well. So basically like not being physically active enough can lead to, lots of health conditions, including obesity and all the other ones that can stem out to as well. We talk about I mentioned earlier costs to the NHS. So last year, diabetes cost the NHS £10 billion per year. Obesity cost the NHS £6.5 billion per year. And musculoskeletal conditions, so that could be like lower back pain, sciatica, things like that. That costs the NHS £4.76 billion a year. So we're talking like an astronomical amount of money. Enough money to buy a football club these days. So that gives you an idea of, a lot of the reason why the NHS is pretty financially strained, because they're spending a ton of money on lots of health conditions. There's not really a lot we can do ourselves in terms of how the NHS gets funded. That's, down to the guys in number 10 who make those decisions. There's nothing we can do about that. But what we can do is we can improve our own health ourselves and help other people improve their health and fitness and lifestyles, because the problem is that kind of like people these days are living a lot longer. Life expectancy now is a lot higher than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But then the resources, as I touched on earlier, are really stretched, so it's very hard even to just get an appointment with your GP. I mean, I have asthma, for example, and I have an asthma review with my GP every year. And I remember, I think about 3 or 4 years ago, got the appointment booked, and they were basically like, oh, it's going to be done over the telephone. And I'm kind of like, well, how can my GP assess my asthma over the telephone? But as strange as it is, that's kind of the world we live in. Lots of appointments are done remotely because of the, like I say, lack of resources. But, a lot of these like health conditions, that's a massive issue in our country. A lot of people kind of wait for things to happen and then do something about it. So they're reactive. So somebody might get told, your BMI is 35, 40, or whatever it may be, for example, your class is obese. And then it's like, oh, okay, you need to do something about this. But I like to think that prevention is better than cure. So no matter how healthy or fit you think you may be, it's very important that we, live active, healthy lifestyles now, so that it massively reduces the likelihood of developing those ill health conditions that I've touched on earlier, obesity, diabetes, MSK, plus X, Y, and Z, etc., etc. I think, how can we then ease the burden on the NHS? And the best way to do that is by looking after ourselves, looking after each other. I think, health outweighs wealth, and I think it's a case of prioritizing. So every single person's number one priority should be your own health, because without your own health, you won't be able to look after your family. You won't be able to do stuff that you enjoy doing. You won't be able to go to work. It can lead to a load of problems. So the number one thing you can do for yourself, the best way to help yourself, is to look after your own health. How can we do that? Well, it's not as difficult as you might think, to be honest. I mean, I think first step is basically to move more. If you have a sedentary lifestyle, whether you've got like an office job, or whether you like to spend all day, every day, most evenings, sat on the sofa watching TV, nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying don't do that, but not at the expense of like looking after your health and moving about. So even if you just do half an hour of physical activity or exercise per day, it's better than nothing. And it would definitely like make you a lot more healthier, improve your physical health, and also improve your mental health. Now, even if that just means like going for a walk for half an hour, whether it's before work, after work, or during your lunch break, then go outside and go for a walk for half an hour. There's all sorts of things you can do. You can go cycling, you can go to the gym, you can go swimming, you can do a fitness class. Even in your own living room, you can put YouTube up on your TV and you can do like a 30-minute Pilates or yoga or HIIT class. So there's lots of resources out there. and you don't have to have loads of money to, obviously you've got to, like, gym memberships, for example, or going swimming costs money, but there are ways you can do it for free, such as I've touched on earlier, going for a walk, going for a run, or like putting a class on YouTube on your living room TV and just doing half an hour's worth of exercise there. And then, yeah, if you just do that, it'll make you feel a lot better, both physically and mentally. I think a lot of this is linked to, motivation, I think, because a lot of people expect overnight results, and when they don't see overnight results, they think, what's the point in doing this? So I'm not going to bother. But like, at the end of the day, everything is a journey and not a destination. So in terms of like your health and your fitness, it's a case of setting yourself some SMART goals, so specific goals that are measurable, achievable, realistic, and you've got the time to do them. Nothing has to be like complicated. It can all be like very simple. But if you say, for example, yeah, I'm going to on a Monday, I'm going to go for a walk for half an hour. On a Tuesday, I'm going to do a Pilates session in my living room or at the local community centre, wherever it may be, and then just something along all the days of the week. I think half an hour per day, which is 1% of your day, by the way, I think is a very achievable goal, regardless of who you are, how busy you are, how many commitments you have. You've still got another 23 and a half plus hours to do everything that you need to do, with family, work, and other commitments. So I do think like those things I've just suggested is nothing like revolutionary. It's very simple, really. And I think, the key is just like giving yourself a routine. And then that leads to habits, and then you just carry on and carry on and carry on. So like I say, just like, even if you write it down in your diary or a piece of paper or your notes on your phone or something, just set yourself a target to achieve each day. And then as you do that more and more and more, your motivation like stays high, and then you start seeing results. Like, it could be like, oh, I'm not feeling as out of breath when I walk up the stairs anymore, or this t-shirt feels a bit looser on me now, or I just feel much better about myself mentally. Lots of little things. They're all different. We all have different goals and different motivations, but I think if you set yourself realistic goals, then you're onto a winner, really. And then, if you can do that with somebody else too, then even better, because you hold yourselves accountable. So say if you go to the gym with a friend, if you wake up in the morning and think, oh, I can't really be bothered today, because we all do feel like that sometimes. We feel like we can't be bothered, but then you'll be like, oh well, I'm meeting up with my friends here, like I better go and meet them, and then you just hold each other accountable, and then both motivate each other, spur each other on, and then, like I say, you are much more likely to achieve your goals and a lot less likely to develop health conditions later on in life and further down the line. So that, with that, then you're less likely to need to go to hospital. You're less likely to go and need to book an appointment with your GP. And then that eases the pressure and burden on the NHS, and of course on yourself too. So it's like a win-win situation. I think like my other suggestions, kind of outside of my control and your control, I think like making facilities and sessions more accessible to people. So you might have people who live in rural areas who struggle to travel. And maybe they don't have a car. There's a lack of public transport and things like that. So I think some way of making facilities more accessible, whether that's like in councils and governments increasing public transport into rural areas, or like minibus services, things like that, just to like bring people to the facilities in the first place, because that's like the biggest step, I think. And also making like sessions more accessible as well. I think like, fitness classes, the gym, swimming sessions as well, they are like suited to like all fitness levels and all ability levels. Obviously, like people have different preferences. So, some people, for example, might find the gym really daunting, really intimidating, which is completely normal. So, why not, do a class or go for a swim instead, or vice versa? There's always like something for everyone. And I think as well, making sessions kind of like more specified, to make it more targeted to a certain demographic as well. I think, big example is like actually this morning, the day of recording this, for the first time at Selby Leisure Centre, we launched a Pedaling for Parkinson's session. So basically, as the name suggests, it's targeted at like people who have Parkinson's, not just them, but like anyone who has carers as well, so they can come and do like a spin class with myself, where basically like they just like keep their legs moving, stay sat down in the bikes, but moving their legs fast, listening to 60s music, which is what they requested, and it went down a treat for them. But the idea is that like the whole pedaling for Parkinson's is actually, there's been big studies on it over the last decade or so all over the world, and it is scientifically proven to reduce people's Parkinson's symptoms by around 35%. Not only that, that just like makes the day-to-day living, slightly easier, but then also you've got like that social aspect of it as well, the social element to it. And, it gets people out of the house, it gives people that structure and gives them that sense of achievement by the end of it. So that's just an example of how different sessions can be targeted to, certain people or different demographics. And I think those things are pretty inspiring, to be honest with you, and like really good initiatives to have. So I think the more of those that we have available, around wherever you live, the better. One thing I've noticed actually in, like when I was like a kid, for example, every village had like a sort of like a mini GP surgery, if you like. And I would say like a lot of them certainly over the last sort of 5 to 10 years have closed down now, and that can be quite a problem because, as I've touched on earlier, people living in villages in rural areas who might not have access to transport, suddenly it's like becomes very difficult for them to get transport to their nearest GP surgery in the local town. So I think having like your village GP surgeries are absolutely essential, really, to make it more accessible. Also, like reduce the strain on your, town centre GP surgeries as well. Just have it all like sort of spread out across, all your local villages. I think that's really important. Again, you just have that community aspect as well. And I think it's a massive shame. And, I would be inclined to ask local MP, whoever that may be, like, what's the crack? Why are these shutting down? Don't tell me that it's not financially viable or there's not a big enough demand for it, because there absolutely is. There's lots and lots of people living with health conditions, and, it would be in everybody's best interest, in my opinion, to have, bring the surgeries to the people rather than the people have to go to the surgeries. It makes every bit of sense for me. And, even though I touched on earlier on in the episode about, how, certain medical conditions are costing the NHS billions of pounds a year, I can tell you now that it would be a lot cheaper to build and open a GP surgery in local villages, make it more accessible for people. And then, like I say, if we improve our health, we're less likely to need it anyway, but it's better to have it. So yeah, I think having those GP surgeries reopening villages is a no-brainer, and it would make everybody's lives a lot easier, and it would reduce waiting times, and it would reduce the pressure on the NHS. So yeah, that's my thought on that one. And then going back to the sort of prevention is better than cure motto that I like to say, I think like educating early doors is really, really important. So I think like whether that's in like local community centres or in primary schools, secondary schools, places like that, I think just educating both parents and children, on, just like basic nutrition, for example, kind of like foods that are good for you, and what we all should be eating, in order to become healthier, but not just the nutrition side of it, but also the physical activity side of it as well. So make PE lessons like every single day of the week, Monday to Friday. Make it mandatory. So no fake sick notes or anything like that to get out of PE, like a lot of people certainly did when I went to school. I just think like promoting that active lifestyle and healthy lifestyle through your physical activity and your nutrition, looking at children, what that means, it promotes like good behaviors and good habits for when they grow older and leave school and, go into adulthood, and have that exercise as part of their daily routine as well. I think that's like really important. And I think that needs to be like drilled into people, early doors, really. And then that just makes people less likely in the longer term, as I touched on earlier, to develop health conditions. And all of that as a whole will massively reduce the strain on the NHS, reduce the financial burden. Everyone's a winner. And, as a nation, we become a lot healthier. I know, like, obviously, like, nothing is ever simple, but that is kind of the gist of what I think could be done to improve the NHS, and improve everything for everybody, whether that's myself, whether that's to you, your family, whoever it may be. What I really like is like one of my close friends, he's married and they have two kids together. And, pretty much like every single weekend, they're doing something like, exercise, physical activity related, with their two kids. They often take them to like a junior park run on a Sunday morning, for example. And I just think that's really, really good because you're out and you're doing something together as a family, and, you're promoting a more active, healthier lifestyle. So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone there. And I love that. So I think like, that's certainly what I would do if I ever have kids of my own. But I just think, yeah, there's lots of things out there for people to access. I will touch on park running, for example, because there's lots of park runs all over the place every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock, and then you've got your junior park runs on a Sunday morning. This isn't like a sales pitch, by the way, but I've done park run quite a few times myself, and I think they're absolutely brilliant. They're completely free to take part in. All you have to do is get yourself there. But it's like a very friendly, like non-intimidating atmosphere. And there's people of all fitness levels. You've got some like super fit people who are insane and they'll run a 5K in like sub 16 minutes, for example. You've got, all the way, some people like walk the 5K, or just getting themselves out and about moving. And, again, like it improves your physical health, it improves your mental health, it improves your confidence. And that accessibility barrier that I touched on earlier, well, it's literally free of charge. All you have to do is put on a pair of trainers or a pair of, comfortable shoes, and away you go, and starts at 9 o'clock, and then you do it, and then you've got the rest of your day to enjoy yourself. So, yeah, I think we need more of things like that, not just parkrun, but just like more kind of events or sessions that are kind of like more accessible and, either free of charge or low cost, just make them accessible for the people. And then, like I say, that promotes good behaviors and good habits. So that's kind of, I think I'm pretty much finished here in terms of like how I would improve not just the NHS, but also like people's lifestyles and habits in general, kind of in a nutshell. What I am going to talk about in a future episode, maybe even the next one, is something that has become really popular, particularly over the last year or two, is fat loss injections. And let's just say I'm not a fan of them at all. And I'm going to talk about that in much more depth in a future episode. So what I'm going to do now, so earlier in the week, I put something on my Instagram stories. Basically, if anyone has any questions, then fire away, and then I'll answer them. So I'm just going to like get my phone out and just, I've definitely screenshot them. and I have found them. So that's all good. So just pop my phone there and I'll just read the questions out. So yeah, thank you very much for your questions. And like I say, if you do have a question that you want me to answer, or a topic that you want me to talk about, or if there's a certain guest that you want me to have on, then just send me a DM on Instagram and I will, or comment below, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and I will do my very best to answer it or get a certain guest on. So let me read them out now. I've got a few. So got a question from the mate Ryan Hill. Ryan, thanks for your question. Get well soon, pal. Hope to see you again soon on the gym floor. Nutrition pre and post run, what are the best strategies? That is a very good question. A lot of it, in my experience, has been kind of like trial and error, kind of see what works for you and see what doesn't work for you. And there's no like one size fits all answer. Obviously, like lots of people have different dietary requirements, for example, where you can't eat certain foods. So I can only really talk from my own experience. So in terms of like a pre-run, it depends really what time of the day I'm going for a run at. So if I was to go for a run at say 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'll actually just like not eat. I'll just go for a run as soon as I get out of bed. Because I would typically eat about 2 hours before I go for a run. I'm certainly not going to get up at like 4:35 a.m. to eat something before I then go for a run 2 hours later. But what I would do the previous evening is like eat a meal that's like high in carbohydrates. So it's something, you'll probably heard of a term called carb loading. So if I'm carb loading, like typically I will either eat pasta or rice, but mainly pasta, and I'll have it with like, either like chicken or turkey or like a bolognese or something like that. But then if I'm, say for example, I'm doing a marathon, which might come as a shock to some of you, but yeah, say if I've entered a marathon race day, so like I say, I'll carb load for about 3 days before race day for a marathon, and I'll eat what I've just touched on earlier. But then on the morning of a marathon, so marathons that I've done typically start anywhere between sort of 9, 10 a.m. So at around like sort of 7, half 7 in the morning, I'll eat like typically like a bowl of porridge and a banana, just like enough to give you those carbohydrates so you get that slow release and energy throughout your body, but then also like not too much food that I'm going to be still feeling bloated on the start line, which is the last thing I want. So yeah, that's what I would eat pre-race. Now, I know you've not asked about this, but during the race, if I was to run anything a marathon or above, like I would have some electrolyte gels on me, just because like basically give you like quick releasing carbohydrates because they've got sugar in. When I did like an ultra marathon last year, I actually had like jelly babies on me, for that same reason, but also to just like get something solid down me rather than just having liquids, because there's only so many gels that I can take without being sick of them. So that's what I do. And then post race or post run, I want to get like protein in there. So typically as soon as I possibly can, I'll have like a whey protein shake, just like 1 or 2 scoops, depending on how much protein I want to get into me. What I typically do, I'll buy like a 1 kilogram tub of whey protein at a time, because what I've done before in the past actually is I've bought like a 2.5 kilogram tub, but then I've got bored of the flavor, but then I'm stuck with it for a while. So yeah, typically like I'll have like a chocolate mint flavor, but also I like strawberry flavor and cookies and cream flavor, and I kind of just like rotate between them. Or if you, for whatever reason you don't have whey protein powder, even some chalky milk would be good, but obviously like not too much if you're listening, Alex. But then like obviously you want to get food in you as well, so you need to get protein for growth and repair of your muscles, which is a basic function of that. You also want to get carbs in as well, because you need to replenish the glycogen stores in your muscles, which will have been depleted like during your run. So yeah, something like chicken and rice, or again like any meat with pasta is good. At the end of the day, just whatever you enjoy eating, really. It doesn't have to be anything boring or bland. But if I've run a marathon, for example, then I want to treat myself. So like typically I'll have like a pizza or a Chinese, which I know is like poor advice in the context of nutrition. But at the end of the day, I am human, and if I've just like done a race and got a medal around my neck, then that's what I'm gonna do. And goes without saying, I'll have a pint of Guinness as well. Not after the training runs, but just after I've done like a race, because you know what, why not? So cheers for your question, Ryan. Next question is from Mira, who I know from the gym. So thanks for your question. In your experience, what is the most common mistake runners make that leads to injuries? And again, another very good question, very relevant and relatable as well. So yeah, I when I first started running like quite a few years ago, I would typically do like 5Ks and the odd 10K here and there. I always used to get what would be known as runner's knee. And it's very common amongst runners, as you can probably tell. But yeah, I think a lot of mistakes that runners make, and certainly mistakes that I made when I first started running, is a lack of resistance training and strength and conditioning training. Obviously, like when you're running, you know, you need to strengthen all the muscles in your legs. You've got your quads and your hamstrings, absolutely vital for strengthening them. You know, you need to strengthen around your knees, you need to strengthen around your hips and your calves as well, and also your glutes as well. I think a massively common thing, actually, common cause of injuries, including runner's knee and plantar fasciitis, is actually caused by weak glutes. So, you know, training your glutes is really important. So doing exercises such as like hip thrusts, glute bridges, you know, kickbacks on the cable machine, for example, hip abductions, you know, are all good examples of exercises that you can do, you know, in the gym or even like at home with a resistance band to strengthen your glutes. That basically means that like there's less strain on your feet, on your heels, which would then, you know, reduce the likelihood of developing plantar fasciitis. But also it means that like, you know, your femur, you know, attaching onto your knee, it's not going to sort of like rub the wrong way, which is what in essence causes runner's knee. So I think like yeah, the biggest mistake is definitely, I would say, a lack of strength and conditioning training. So, you know, when I do my training program, typically in a week I'll go for a run 3 or 4 days a week, and then I will do 2 gym sessions a week that's purely like strength and conditioning. So I'll work on strengthening my legs in one session, and I'll also work on strengthening my core as well. Strengthening your core is really important for runners, because that means that when you do, again, I'll touch on a marathon, but it could even be a 10K or whatever. As you get towards the end of the race, naturally, your body will start to fatigue. If you've got like a really weak core, then it'll affect your posture, and you know, you'll start sort of like, you know, mine's gone completely blank. Shrugging your shoulders like this, and then basically like you're slouching, and then it, you know, it has the impact, puts too much weight on your knees and your ankles, and then you just get injured. So yeah, I think I explained that right, but my mind did just go completely blank there for a second. But yeah, if you've got like a strong core, then as you fatigue during the latter stages of a run or an event, then, you know, naturally your posture is going to be a lot more like taller and neutral, you know, chest lifted, shoulders back, more natural. And then it's a lot less strain on your knees, your hips and your ankles. So yeah, I think definitely a lack of resistance training, particularly glutes and core muscles, is probably the biggest mistake that runners make, and definitely in my experience as well. Really good question. Thank you for that. Going to answer one more question, which is from Nick. The question he asks is, why do Arsenal love being bottle jobs? And politely, Nick, I'm not going to answer that question because you're a Liverpool fan. But what I might do is wait until the end of May, and then I might get back to you on that one. And hopefully the answer will be what you're talking about. So yeah, thank you for the questions. As I touched on earlier, if you do have a question or a topic that you'd like me to talk about, then comment below or send me a DM on Instagram. I will do my very best to get them in. Um, just a final one. If anybody would like to sponsor the podcast or sponsor an episode in the future, then like I say, please do get in touch. A great opportunity for you to like promote yourself or promote your business. You know, whether you own a gym, whether you own some kind of supplement brand or gym clothing brand, or dare I say, if you own a farm shop, you know, I'll get it out there for you. So yeah, get in touch with me if you would like to sponsor the pod, and we'll do great things together. And then last but not least, thank you so much for tuning in, listening and watching. Really appreciate it. This is like the first time I've ever kind of like talked to myself in front of a camera, which feels really weird because I'm used to talking to people, but hopefully this comes across all right for you. If you're watching on YouTube, please like the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell next to that button so that you get notified of a new episode. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, or whatever other streaming service, then yeah, please again, like, subscribe, set your notifications on, and share it with people as well who you think might benefit from this. Like I say, we're going to cover all sorts of topics over the next few months. I'm also going to get some really good guests on as well. And, you know, I've got a few people in mind who I find really inspiring, so I'm sure you will too. It's Friday night now. It's bang on 6 o'clock now as I'm recording this. So I'm going to grab a beer, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.